Rewriting equations, practice number 4. If D equals this equation, or this quantity, then which of the following is an expression of y sub 2 in terms of the other variables? So we want to isolate y sub 2, and you're going to probably recognize this as the distance formula. So think of this as getting rid of all of the outside, and so you'll be left with only y sub 2 on one side of the equation. And as just a reminder, up above here, when I say inverse operations, opposite of adding is subtracting. Opposite of multiplying is dividing. And opposite of taking the square root of something is 2 squared. So these operations will cancel one another out. Okay, so we want to isolate the y sub 2. So I'm going to get rid of the outside, which is the square root. Opposite of taking the square root is squaring something. Whatever you do to one side, you must do to the other side to keep the equation balanced. The square root and the square cancel. And again, we're trying to solve for y sub 2. So we have two terms here. This contains the y sub 2. I'm trying to get rid of the outside. I have a positive quantity here. So to move this whole positive quantity to the opposite side, I do the inverse operation. Opposite of positive is negative. They cancel out. On the right-hand side, I still have the quantity containing the y sub 2, and I cannot combine these two terms, so I'm going to write it in a single row. And again, you're trying to get rid of the outside until you get down to the point where y sub 2 is by itself. Opposite of squaring something. Opposite of squaring a quantity is taking the square root of it. So whatever you do to one side, you must do to the opposite side. The square root and the square cancel, and you're left with the quantity y sub 2 minus y sub 1. Last step, to isolate the y sub 2, you need to get rid of y sub 1. It's being subtracted. Opposite of subtracting is adding. Y sub 1's cancel. And now I'm going to write in a row y sub 2 is equal to the quantity d squared minus x sub 2 minus x sub 1 quantity squared plus y sub 1. Notice this is not underneath the radical symbol. It's behind. Okay, let's look at our options. I have a d squared inside. They all contain d squared. A subtraction sign. I'm crossing out anything that does not have a subtraction sign. Then the quantity x sub 2 minus x sub 1 quantity squared. Okay, that doesn't have a square. X sub 2 minus x sub 1 squared, x sub 2 minus x sub 1 squared. And then the last thing is plus y sub 1, plus y sub 1. The correct multiple choice answer is B. Please flip the paper over and begin on independent practice number 2. You have 1 minute to complete this problem. And stop. Let's go over independent practice number 2. And you may recognize this equation as being the equation for the area of a trapezoid. So we're asked, which of the following is an expression for b sub 2, and it's actually an equation for b sub 2 in terms of a, h, and b1. So we want to isolate the b sub 2. So again, on the side that contains the b sub 2, it's like we want to peel an onion and get down to the very core, okay? Get rid of the outside one by one. So I'm going to start with the 1/2. There's two different ways to eliminate 1/2. One is 1/2 is being multiplied by these quantities, so we could divide by 1/2, but at this point in your math career, you have learned that to eliminate the 1/2, I can multiply by the reciprocal to both sides, keeping the equation balanced. By doing so, the 1s and the 2s cancel, and when they cancel, they really turn into a 1. 2 times a is 2a, and dividing it by 1 doesn't change the value, so you're not required to put a 1 on the bottom. Now we're going to get rid of the next thing on the outside of the parentheses, which is h. h is being multiplied by this quantity. The inverse operation, or the opposite operation of multiplying, is dividing. Divide both sides by h. h is cancels, really turns into a 1. 2a over h. And final step, to isolate b sub 2, you want to remove the b sub 1. Opposite of a positive b sub 1 is a negative b sub 1. b sub 1's cancel. And this is my final answer. Now I'm going to look off to the side here. I have 2a over h, not 2a over h, not 2 over h. Okay, so 2a over h, subtract b sub 1. Notice that this is not on top with the numerator. It is separated by a subtraction sign. Correct answer is D.